Hello again, everyone. Welcome to Washington Gun Law TV. I am Washington Gun Law President William Kirk. Thanks for joining us. Hey, listen, for those of you who routinely geek out on this channel, you know there's two things we really talk about predominantly here. One is changes in the law so that you can understand where the lines are now, and then you get to decide whether you're going to scribble inside or outside. And then, unfortunately, what we spent a lot of time in the last couple of years talking about is the absolute onslaught on your otherwise inalienable rights and the huge push, both on a state and federal level, to absolutely complete civilian disarmament. Yes, they call it gun control. We call it civilian disarmament on this channel. Now, along the way, we have seen the Biden administration, the Department of Justice, and the ATF be by far the most nefarious of the offenders. And we have seen during this last couple of years two major rulemaking orders, which turned out to be a complete overreach into your constitutional rights. One involving firearms with attached stabilizing braces, soon to die a very rapid death in the Court of Appeals. And of course, ATF's rule on frames and receivers, what you call 80% lowers, also about to die a very quick death in the courts. However, now we understand that the ATF is going to be at it again. The Biden administration wants them to propose a new rule, and this is going to significantly affect your ability to have access to firearms. So today, let's get you all up to speed on the next ATF rule to disarm you. Okay, so what we're talking about today was originally a story was broken out on ammoland.com. John Crump was the author on that. Excellent author, excellent publication. If you guys are not visiting ammoland.com every day, you should be doing that. That's where I am keeping up to speed on a lot of things related to your Second Amendment rights. But it appears that after the overwhelming success of ATF's rules on frames and receivers, and after the overwhelming success on ATF's rules on firearms with attached stabilizing braces, the ATF is going to be at it again, proposing a new rule that is essentially going to be intended to shut down every private sale of a firearm, okay? So if you have a person in Arkansas who wants to sell through Gunbroker to somebody in Louisiana or whatever scenario you could think of, if that seller is not an FFL, they don't get to do it. Otherwise, it's a violation of federal law. Now, this clearly goes to one of the larger war fronts that we've seen right now on your inalienable rights, which is the fight to prevent access to firearms. So we're seeing a huge fight coming from the shipping companies, from the credit card companies, from the banking industry. We're seeing the federal government attack the FFL industry. We're seeing attacks on ammunition manufacturers. When that pesky little thing called the Constitution gets in the way, they will stop at nothing, and they're trying to use private commerce and other ways, again, to thwart your otherwise inalienable rights. Now, this closing the private sale loophole is something that we suffered through way back in 2009 in Washington State. And listen, I'm going to give you a quick roadmap of how it works here in Washington, but I do want to tell you that anytime you're using Washington State as a roadmap, things aren't going real well for what might be coming in your state. In Washington State, every single private sale, if I want to sell a firearm to another private individual, has to go through an FFL. A background check has to be conducted on the purchaser unless the purchaser happens to be an immediate family member. There's a list of immediate family members and the types of familial relationships that you can have. RCW 9.41.113, if you guys really want to geek out, we'll link it down below, okay? That's how it works in Washington State. If you sell a firearm to another private citizen without conducting a background check through an FFL, you are in violation of state law. The purchaser is as well. What the Biden administration and the ATF wants to do here is basically redefine who is an FFL to be anybody who ever sells a gun. Now, you sit there and you go, okay, well, they could try all they want. It's not like they get to change the law. And we saw this with the rule on frames and receivers. We saw this with the rule on stabilizing braces. But here's the problem here. Here's what's a little different here is, you see, there was a change in the law. There was a change in the law last year that significantly changes how we define FFLs. And therefore, there's a statutory hook by which the ATF could hang their hat on this one, unlike what they had with stabilizing braces and 80% lowers. Now, as some of you may recall, Just last year, we passed the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, which, yes, there were many Republicans who actually supported that. And that 36-page bill does lots of things. We'll link it up down there for you in case you want to geek out on the whole thing. But all you really need to do is take a look at the bottom of page 12, top of page 13 of the bill, because you will see that 18 U.S.C. section 921 sub A was amended. What is that statute? Well, that's the statute that helps us define who is engaged in the act of being an FFL and therefore who is required to actually have that federal license. There was a significant change in the wording, and it is such now that ATF actually has the statutory language to argue with a straight face that anybody who ever sells a firearm to another private citizen is acting as they are an FFL and needs the license. Here's what I'm talking about. The old statute, 921A, used to require that the individual was selling firearms with the principal objective of livelihood and profit. However, the new definition under 921A only requires the person to predominantly earn a profit. However, the real concern comes from the definitional section found now in subsection 22, which states that the term to predominantly earn a profit means that the intent underlying the sale or disposition of firearms is predominantly one of obtaining pecuniary gain as opposed to other interests such as improving or liquidating a personal firearms collection, provided that proof of profit shall not be required as to a person who engages in the regular and repetitive purchase and disposition of firearms for criminal purposes or terrorism. For purposes of this paragraph, the term terrorism means activity directed against the United States. So you can see with some of that vague language and some of the gray areas that there are some gaps there in which the ATF can sink their hooks into and have firmer ground to stand on than we saw with their previous rulemaking orders. Now, we anticipate that we may get a draft of the rule sometime late this year. More realistically, you're likely going to see the rule sometime in the spring of 2024. Yes, there will be a comment period, and we need to really take note of how effective the comment section is, especially as it relates to the rule on stabilizing braces, because ultimately all of those comments force the ATF to completely change direction on that. But that change in direction ultimately led to why the Fifth Circuit has now thrown that rule out on its ass. So this is something that we're going to have to very carefully watch. If you're doing any business on these third-party websites, Armlist, Firearms Classified, Gunbroker.com, any of those places, yeah, if that's how typically you're engaging in commerce, if that's how you're building your collection, if that's how you're disposing of your collection, your days may be significantly numbered here if this rule goes into effect. This is yet again another way in which this administration, this Department of Justice, and this ATF is absolutely hell-bent on achieving civilian disarmament. We will obviously keep you posted. As there are more developments, you will be the first to know. Listen, you may have more questions about this or anything else related to what's left of our Second Amendment rights. Now, you guys should know how to get a hold of Washington gun law by now, but if you don't, that's okay. That information is right down there in the description box. Now, in the meantime, I want all of you to remember that part of being the lawful and responsible gun owner, like we talk about all the time here, is to know what the law is in every situation, how it applies to you in any instance that you may find yourself. Until next time, thanks for watching. Stay safe.